recommendations from the standing committees, beginning with academic affairs. Chairman Alsea.
Mr. Chairman, the Academic Affairs Committee has 7 action items for consideration that were considered by the committee and approved. Item 2 on page 197 requests authorization to establish the College of Architecture, Planning, and Public Affairs at UT Arlington to amend the Regents' rules accordingly. Item 3 on page 199 recommends establishment of the Doctor of Philosophy degree program in Mechanical Engineering at UT El Paso. Item 4 on page 203 requests approval of Master of Science degree program in Identity and Security Management at UT Austin. Item 5 on page 208 recommends authorization of the East Campus Master Plan for UT Austin. Item 6 on page 215 proposes transfer of assets from UT Pan American, UT Brownsville, UT Health Science Center, South Texas, and Lower Rio Grande Valley Academic Health Center to UT Rio Grande Valley, effective August 30th, 2015, and the abolition of UT Pan American, effective September 1st, 2015. Item 7 on page 218 requests approval of tuition and fee proposals for UT Rio Grande Valley Tooling Medical School for fiscal year 2016. Item 8 on page 224 recommends approval of tuition and fee proposals for Development Medical School at UT Austin for fiscal year 2017. Chairman Foster, the Academic Affairs Committee recommends approval of these action items, and I move for approval.
Thank you. Audit compliance and management review. Chairman Hildebrand.
No report.
No report. Good. Facilities planning and construction. Chairman Davis.
Well, that's a lot more efficient of a report than I have. The Facilities Planning and Construction Committee has 14 items for consideration, all considered by the committee and approved. Items 2 through 8 on pages 288 to 298 concern additions to the capital improvement program to include 4 projects at UT Austin, the Bureau of Economic Geology Building Laboratory Repair and Renovation, the East Campus Parking Garage, the Graduate Student Housing Complex, the Mentopolis Research Center Office Building Repair and Renovation, Student Housing Phase 6 project at UT Dallas, and 2 projects at UT Health Science Center Houston, the Medical School Extension Building Renovation, the UT Professional Building Garage Facade Replat Project. Now, the Medical School Renovation Project at Houston is linked to the purchase of real estate discussed in executive session. With respect for the committee's action yesterday, I recommend that the board table approval of the renovation project at this time. Further, items 9 through 14 on pages 300 to 311 request approval of design development and related actions for 7 projects. Item 9 relates to the Austin by Ellsworth Kelly project at UT Austin. Item 10 relating to the Speedway Mall and East Mall project also at UT Austin was revised to require that phase 2 of the project be brought back to the board. Item 11 concerns the parking structure, phase 4 project at UT Dallas, which is also being added to the CIP. Item 12 concerns the science building project at UT Rio Grande Valley. Item 13 relates to the radiation therapy building project at UT Southwestern Medical Center. And item 14 concerns the Mark Plaza project at the UT Health Science Center San Antonio. Item 15 on page 314 requests approval to modify the CIP to increase the total project cost for the E.H. Hereford University Center repurposing renovation project at UT Arlington. Mr. Chairman, the Facilities Planning and Construction Committee recommends approval of these action items, and I move for approval.
Thank you. Finance and planning. Chairman Hicks.
The Finance and Planning Committee has 4 items on the agenda, 3 action items for approval and presentation of utility performance summary. Item 3 on page 178 requests approval of fiscal year 2016 budget preparation policies and calendar. Item 4 on page 182 concerns utility performance summary. Any questions about that? Item 5 on page 188 requests approval of the annual distribution for the permanent university fund. Item 7 on page 192 requests approval of $7 million from the AUF for a shared service and analysis project. Chairman Foster, the Finance and Planning Committee recommends approval of these actions, and I move approval.
Thank you. Technology transfer and research. I believe there are no action items. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And then Health Affairs, Chairman Craig.
The Health Affairs Committee has 4 action items for consideration that were considered by the committee and approved. Item 2 on page 406 recommends authorization of tuition and fee proposals for UT Southwestern Medical Center, UT Medical Branch Galveston, UT Health Science Center Houston, UT Health Science San Antonio, and UT MD Anderson Cancer Center for fiscal year 2016. The recommendation includes revisions to proposed tuition for the UT Health Science Center San Antonio School of Health Professions. Item 3 on page 246 requests approval to name a new brain institute at UT Southwestern Medical Center in honor of Peter O'Donnell Jr. Item 4 on page 248 proposes preliminary authority for a Doctor of Occupational Therapy degree program at UT Health Science Center San Antonio. Item 6 on page 282 requests approval of $5 million of available university funds to support phase 1B of the UT system-wide diabetes and obesity control initiative and delegation of authority to contract with selected entities to conduct essential feasibility studies. Chairman Foster, the Health Affairs Committee recommends approval of these action items, and I move approval.
Thank you. Now, the board will now vote to approve the recommendations of the standing committees. Would all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Will pass.
Chairman Foster, I vote in favor of those. I do have an understanding relative to UT RGV's tuition recommended increase, which I proposed in the committee meeting. I'm voting for it now with an understanding that we'll be looking hard at whether we can reasonably provide an option for students to have 1 year as opposed to 4-year mandatory opportunity as an option.
Regent Cranberg, I believe you have a motion on item 1A.
I move that the UT System Board of Regents take the following actions on behalf of UT Health Science Center Houston. You want to read the entire?
Yes, I'm afraid so.
Y'all have plenty of time.
Regent Cranberg, actually, each member of the board has seen the motion. You could just move that the board approve the motion that was previously provided.
I move that the board approve the motion for previously provided to authorize the purchase of land and improvements located at 1133 John Freeman Boulevard in the leased library space there.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? All in favor? Any opposed? That passes. Regent Aliseda, do you have a motion on proposed negotiated gifts in item 3?
I do. I move that the UT System Board of Regents authorize the presidents of UT Austin, UT Pan American, UT San Antonio, UT Southwestern Medical Center, UT Health Science Center Houston, UTMD Anderson Cancer Center, and the Vice Chancellor for External Relations to conclude negotiations necessary to finalize and accept gifts to benefit those institutions with potential naming features consistent with the terms and conditions outlined and recommended in executive session.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? That passes. And Vice Chancellor Grant, I believe you have a motion on item 4B.
I do, thank you. I move that the UT System Board of Regents delegate authority to the Chancellor and the Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs to conclude negotiations for the hiring of an individual as Chief Executive Director for Texas Energy Research, Education, and Engineering Institute, consistent with the terms and conditions of employment outlined and recommended in executive session. I further move that the Chancellor and the Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs be authorized to conclude negotiations, execute an agreement with the individual regarding the terms and conditions of employment consistent with the parameters outlined in the executive session, with the requirement that the agreement be submitted to the board for approval via the usual budgetary procedures in compliance with all required notice requirements. Also further move that the minutes reflect by approval of this motion. The board has made a finding as required by Texas Education Code section 51.948 that the potential appointment is in the best interest of the UT system.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? That passes. 16 on page 67 concerns the proposed sale of O'Henry Hall. Do I hear a motion to execute that sale on the terms and conditions discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Second, Ms. Chafficanty. All in favor? Aye. Anybody?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, one opposed. Thank you. That passes. And item 24 on page 395 recommends amendment of Regents Rule 10101, 10401, and 10801. A revised recommendation has been provided to you. Vice Chairman Hicks, do you wish to move on this item?
Yes, I would like to move the motion as approved, and I would like to offer an amendment to the motion as it's on the floor. Do we need a second on the motion first?
Yeah. Well, what's the right procedure
He could offer a revised
there?
motion.
Just make the motion with your amendment, and if it doesn't carry, then
Yep. The revision I'd like to offer is in Rule 10801, 5.4.5, 4 sentences from the bottom. A year ago, this board adopted the infamous 1+1 rule, where if the chairman and the chancellor oppose the regent's request for information, it comes to the board, and 7 members can vote against him having it, and 2 vote for, and it passes. It was nonsensical to me then, it's still nonsensical to me now. So I would move as an amendment that we change the vote from 2 to 5 regents, and that's my motion.
can I ask you, is 5 appropriate, or should it be a majority in case
Majority of regents.
we accept that correction or that change? Discussion on this? I'm sorry.
Clarification, a majority of those voting or a majority of the members of the board? It would either be.
Majority of the members.
Regent Hall?
Frankly, I believe the Regents rules changes over the past year in this particular area have been designed to not only limit the ability for each regent to perform the fiduciary duties required by the law, but also slow down the speed that issues of concern may be brought to the board, not to mention thwarting our duties. It is not appropriate for the Board of Regents to delegate its fiduciary duties to the board that are individually held, nor to the employees for which are supposed to perform their duties for the system. So I would very much oppose to any further changes to these rules to make it more difficult to do our job.
Thank you, Regent Hall. Other questions or comments?
Just a clarifying comment, correct me, but the Texas A&M University system and Texas Tech system all have a regents rule that requires a majority or five individuals to vote in the affirmative.
On this particular rule, I don't believe that either of the institutions have such a rule.
Not that I'm aware of. The problem comes in between the definition between action and information, and we're supposed to be the arbitrator. There's one set of votes for one and one for the other, and I think it is in the best interest for the board to work together. I would also say I think all of these information requests should be fulfilled whenever possible at the chancellor level, but if it comes to the board in that rare occasion, it needs to be a majority of the board that wants to do something, and that's why I offered that amendment.
Do I hear other comments, questions? Bruce Cranberg?
I oppose the motion, particularly as amended. I'm concerned even about the precedent of 1+1, because we individually, as board members, have a fiduciary obligation to satisfy good governance of the university. And more often than not, I think the great majority of the time, the idea of what constitutes adequate information for us to discharge our fiduciary obligation is shared by a majority, if not a unanimous consent of the board. On a very occasional time where it does not, can involve awkward
difficult questions that perhaps the majority of the board would not wish to be associated with endorsing. And I think it's part of what the citizens of Texas expect from a board, is that the occasional board member, even one that asks hard questions that are not endorsed by a majority of the board, should have information with which to be able to pursue reasonable lines of inquiry. I'm not unmindful of the fact that this is taken, this action is proposed in the context of a specific situation in which we find ourselves, in which Regent Hall has asked a lot of awkward questions about admissions, has asked a lot of awkward questions about purchasing and other topics in his wide-ranging investigations, and I wouldn't call them investigations of the system, but his own satisfying his curiosity. And it has led to a number of very important revelations, which I'm confident that the system has and continues to respond in a positive and appropriate way to needed reforms. But I think that it would be unnecessarily neutering individual board members' reasonable lines of inquiry and be chilling in effect to impose a majority requirement. I'm reminded that this situation is a bit like Henry II asking, well, who will rid me of this turbulent priest? And for many long years afterwards, there was a great deal of regret that the turbulent priest was gotten rid of. These new rules, in my view, are analogous to the ridding of this turbulent priest. And if it's not Regent Hall today, perhaps it's another regent 5-10 years from now. Perhaps it's not admissions 5-10 years from now. Perhaps it's another difficult question that needs to be confronted, whether it be at our institution or other institutions. The lone voice of the prickly, difficult questioner must be respected and accepted in extremis. And I don't think this is a situation that calls for that.
Yes.
Mr. Granberry, I think you're making the assumption, however, that I, as the CEO, don't take these concerns seriously. And the fact of the matter is, if a single regent comes to me with an awkward request or something that appears to be inconsistent with the values of the University of Texas system, I guarantee you, I will look into them. That is my responsibility. My only issue with an individual regent making decisions that are contrary to the majority of the board is if, for whatever reason, a regent feels like he is not getting the response he needs from me, then all I ask is that they come back to the board. But I'm happy to answer and to provide access on awkward questions. And in fact, it is my responsibility to do so. And I bear that responsibility very, very seriously.
I know you do. I know you do, Chancellor, and I have the highest regard for you and your willingness and capability to discharge that responsibility. This is not just about this board or this chancellorship.
Well, but you have made it about this board and this chancellorship by focusing on Regent Hall's actions.
Well, his actions took place previous to your becoming chancellor. And in fact, I would say that this relates as much to questions that were asked that led to the Kroll report, allowing us to discover what we didn't learn in the Sharper inquiry, which all predated your tenure. And this is a much longer running journey of discovery that we've had as a board. This most recent incarnation of it is one that is, in my mind, not the purpose, not the point of the general discussion, but it's one about going back a couple of years. How does a board discover something which it should have had, which required an individual's persistent and sometimes highly controversial questioning, that not talking about what he's asking for today. And perhaps if you had been chancellor 6 or 8 months ago, exactly the same process would have transpired with Regent Hall's previous questions. I don't have confidence that every board and every chancellor would have allowed Regent Hall to have asked the questions that he did after the Sharp Corner report came out. And there's a tremendous amount of pressure, including from some regions around this table, for him not to pursue those inquiries. And if he had not pursued those inquiries, we never would have learned what we learned, and we would never have had the opportunity to change our admissions process, to have heard from the Blue Ribbon panel today about recommendations that they're making to our previous processes that are going to make this university a better and more excellent and leading institution.
Regent Granberg, I agree with most everything you've said, and it's certainly not my intent, nor do I believe it's the intent of the board to restrict access to any data other than legally restricted data like FERPA, HIPAA, and those kind of things. What we're trying to do, though, is bring some order on that rare occasion where a request is not automatically and routinely filled. On that rare occasion when it's either questionable legally or it's unreasonably burdensome, in which case the chancellor has to weigh in and make some decisions. And if those decisions don't meet with the approval of the board, then the board can set the chancellor on a different course. I don't think anybody wants to restrict access to information, and I certainly don't, other than FERPA. I'm very, very firm on that. But that's not the intent here, and you're making it sound as if it is. And we're in a public forum, and so I think it's very important to clarify.
Well, I think that's exactly why it's important to have this discussion. The amendment of the Rule 108.01 from a 1+1, which was a test of reasonableness, to a majority, it does not pertain to FERPA specifically, but to any and all information. And so I think that what we're doing here is hamstringing future regions, future boards unnecessarily, just because there are only 4 regions instead of 5 that might want to look into something that concerns them. And the history of boards around this country does not lend itself to a huge amount of confidence that 4 are always wrong and 5 are always right when we're looking about a mere issue of transparency.
And it's not always a matter of right and wrong, it's a matter of what set the direction of the board as well. And at some point, the majority has to rule.
I do believe that this amendment in particular is designed to thwart the ability of the regents to perform the fiduciary duty. I think Vice Chairman Hicks knows that. That's the purpose of it. And it gives the appearance that, that things that are of great concern to members of the board can be covered up now and in the future. And I think that's absolutely wrong. That does not serve the people of Texas.
I would disagree. I mean, and to follow up on what Regent Cranberg said, this is a request that the chancellor and the chairman have both said are unreasonable. All I'm asking, I think it's good governance. It comes to the board, and it shouldn't come to the board unless it's a very rare instance. But if it does, the majority of the board should rule, just like it does any other governing body. I mean, it's good governance to do that. I can't imagine that a 7 against and 2 for passes in any kind of legislative session I've ever seen.
We're not exactly talking about taking action or not taking action. We're talking about allowing a regent with fiduciary obligations access to information which is in the system's possession. I'm not sure that is the sort of action which need require a majority of the board. But I will say this, I am confident that if this rule had been in place, with this board, the Kroll report never would have been instigated, and the Sharp Corner investigation would have been the end of that investigation, and we would have been the poorer for it.
I don't agree with that at all. I was in favor of doing the Kroll report, and I think several other people around this table were as well.
But I'd also offer that we answer questions from the regents every single day. And we do so without a whole lot of hoopla, because they are good questions, they come in, we're happy to answer them. I would agree with the chairman that my point in understanding the amendment here is that it is in those rare circumstances where between consultation between the chairman and myself, we feel like the information is not appropriate or doesn't pass the common sense check or the reasonable check, that all we do is ask to come back with the board to look at it. I don't think that's unreasonable. This is not about little bits of information that then we conceal every minute of every day. It is about those rare occasions where we need information and we need clarity from the board.
Hang on, read your papers first and then we'll also.
I do not support the motion. I do believe, and we all certainly have our own interpretation, and I do have a high respect for everyone's interpretation and everyone sitting around the table. To me, it's not about an individual regent or an individual chancellor. It's about a broad policy that's going to cover us today and in the future. It is restrictive in terms of the regent's right to his or her individual judgment as to what information is necessary for him or her to perform her duties, his duties as they see fit. So I might also add that we received the final red line version of the rules not even 24 hours ago, and I think something as important as this should take a little more time for discussion and time to process. And I know we spent quite a bit of time in discussion already, but in the future, I hope that for important issues like this, it's not a 12 to 24 hour period of time where we're trying to process the changes and the ramifications.
Yeah, I'll accept responsibility for that. I apologize. I agree.
I know it
I
wasn't,
do not disagree.
intended. It's just it's an issue.
Yes, Walt.
Unfortunately, I've got a standing request. We had a meeting, it was public, the outcome was reinterpreted after the fact. You say you bring it back to the board had no vote, there was no action item on whether or not to give me the information or not. So I'm sorry, but that's not the way we've been operating in practice.
I'm prepared to give you the information short of FERPA. I've made that clear a couple of times.
I've been receptive to anything that I'd be willing to, you'd be willing to give me since day one.
That's not the conversation we've recently had here. It was,
Well,
FERPA was part of it. FERPA was part of it. That was part of the discussion.
Listen, my request still includes FERPA, but to the extent you want to give me other stuff, in the meantime, I'm happy to receive it.
Well, it was an all or nothing last time we,
So that's a negotiation, and
I'm happy to negotiate.
Well, why not? But what you're doing is that's a negotiation, and with all due respect, Paul, I'm sorry, this is not the way the fiduciary duty is carried out.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question of Francie. Francie, you had a clarification as it related to the majority of the board. What happens in that rare occasion where somebody abstains or someone is not here? The region doesn't get the information?
That's correct. Under the five vote rule, that's what that's not the, and that is the current rule for amendments to the region's rules. We haven't had the region's rules could fail if there were fewer than the entire board attending. Yeah, the same thing.
So still, it requires 5 votes even if there's only 6 people here, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Or if somebody abstains?
Right.
Correct.
All right. Do I hear a second to Vice Chairman Hicks' motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
No.
Sorry, it was, just to be sure, 1, 2, 3, is that correct? Okay. That passes 6-3. And that concludes the meeting of the board. We are adjourned. Please stop the webcast.